Okay, so hi everyone, and I think that you will be enjoying the world Plone day. Okay, so let's get started. The topic of my title is that that the title of my talk is Do you want to contribute to Volto? And if your answer is yes, and do not know where to start. After this talk, you should have a building blocks related to the Volto, like how it works internally, how its architecture and everything, and how Volto works. So let's get started. But before that, let's see who am I. So I am Alok Kumar, currently working as a front-end developer at KitKaser CMDS. Most of the time I spend on creating Volto blocks and fixing bug for the Volto. I am also the author of Gatsby Theme Plone, and I am also the earlier GSOC student and contributed to Gatsby Source Plone. You can find me on LinkedIn, Twitter, GitHub with the username iFleming. So let's get started with our first topic, which is how Volto generates form for content types. So let's see. So, if you go to the Volto front page, you will see this type of toolbar on your left side. This toolbar contains a add file icon, and when you click this icon, you'll see all your content type. Like a menu is appear and it lists you all your content type. Volto comes with some built-up content types like collection, event, file, folder, image, link, news item, and page. And if you created another, your content type, which is not provider code, is also listed here. So these are the core content type. Okay, so let's see what's happened when you click on any of the file, any of the content type. Okay, so you can see there. I click this add button. We can see our core content type. If I click onto this file, you see we get a pre-populated form which contains our fields of the file content type. Like our file content type consists of title, description, and file. And we want to get deep diver in how this Volto generates this form. So what happens when we click on this file type in the code? So let's see that. So when you click on any content type, like we did for the file content type, the Volto renders a add component. You can find the add component at source component slash manage slash add. And what we are doing in the add component. So in add.jsx, we are fetching the schema of the content type using get schema action. So let's first understand what a schema is. So as you develop any backend project or doing any sort of a smaller project, or for you making a blog, what you need? You need a title field, a link for the image field, and a text of the entire thing, right? So what you will be the schema for your this blog content type. So it will be like, give me a title field with an input, give me a description field with the text area field, and give me an image field where I can upload a image. So this will be your schema. And also here you can see that you are using a fetching the content type using a get schema action. So if you do not know, Volto uses Redux as a state management library, and Redux provides us two methods. One is action handler, and the second is reducer store. Okay, so what we do in action is like we talk to the backend using the action handler, and we save the data in the store. Once the data is stored in the store, we can access it, and then we pass it to the component and we re-render the component. Okay, so I think it is clear like what the get schema function does and what is schema. Okay, so let's get to the next section, like how schema looks like in a Plone world. Okay, so you can see schema look like this. Okay, it's a lot of things. Like first get step by step. So schema is an object which contains key value pair. Okay. So the first key is the field set. The second key is the property. The third key is required. And I'm also not showing you the two other key, which is the layout and the titles. Like you can You can also put a title and a layout for an schema, right? Just give me a second. Okay, so layout and the schema title field. Okay, so this is the field set. Okay, so let's understand what a field set is. So in field set is a set of an array, and in a field set which contains object object type which contains these three properties key value pair. So you have to understand that you can define multiple field set and pass multiple objects. So field set is an array, and you can pass these type of object by any numbers. So you have to just create a object which contains the ID, title, and the fields. Only this thing. The title should be your field set name, and ID for accessing it should be unique so that we can access it. And this is the field. Like what will be the fields for this title, like this tab menu. I'm going to explain it further. Okay. You see, we have fields described here like href, title, description, and preview. You can also see, like in properties, we have this value. You see, we have href here. We also have href here. We have title, description, preview image. So what you can think? You can think of this is whatever we put in the fields array. Okay, you have to define a properties for that related field, right? Do you understand? Like whatever we put into this field tab, we must have a properties defined in the properties column. Otherwise, you will get an error. Okay, so let's see. I think that it's complicated, but you understand that. You just have to understand that is schema is a set of objects which contains some value pair. The first key will be the field set, where you can define this type of a structure, object structure which contains ID, titles, fields, and then the second will be the properties, where you have to define the properties of your fields value. Okay, so this href, title, description, and preview image. I just taken an example. So let's see how this schema look like for a file content type. Okay, so this is the schema of a file content type. You can see schema is an object. Okay, it's have a key called field set. Okay, and this is the array 5. So it denoting that field set has 5 array. Field set has 5 object like a structure which we see earlier. Like it's contain a title, ID, fields, and also contains other thing like its behavior is Plone. If it's coming with the guillotine, it's here it will be the guillotine object. Okay, so if you have a custom backend for the Plone architecture, it will be like node. Okay, so you can see we have field set which has 5 array. You can see the default one. The default one contains 3 fields. Then we have categorization, and categorization contains 3 fields. Then we have dates, 2 fields, ownership, 2 fields, settings, 3 fields. And then you can see we have this layout thing also like file view, and you can also pass the required, like this file type is required. You can also put title, like you want to send a title, otherwise the form will be not accepted. And you see we also have this properties column. So let's see what is in the properties column. As I told you, like properties also contains the same object type structure, but it must be defined in the field. So let's see. We have fields for the default content type, and it defines title, description, and file. Let's check whether it is in the properties column or not. You see, we have this file. Here is the title, and there is description. Okay, let's see for the other. Like let's see for the settings tab, and it's allow discussion, ID, and exclude from nav. Let's see in the properties. If you go to property, allow discussion, exclude from nav, and there is the ID. You see, whatever you define in this fields tab, you have to define in the properties tab. Otherwise, it shows you error. And why we are doing this? Like we are saying Volto like, hey Volto, we have this an ID, a title called default, and we want to draw these 3 fields. Then Volto asks you like, hey, what is the structure of these fields? And then you say, hey, this is the property of the particular fields. So it will be like, okay, so this is the title, and the title contains this type of structure, right? So I think this is the way it's worked. But let's see in on the live site, like how it's work. You see, in if you go to file types, you see we have 5 pins, right? You can see there. So this, see there, like the filters has 5 object type structure, and you can see the first one is title is default, and field is title, description, and file. And you can see there, this is the default pane, and you see we have this title field, description field, and the file type. Okay, let's see another example. So in there, you see we have the title is categorization, and field is subject, language, and related item. So you see, we go to the categorizes. You see, we have tax, language, and related items. Similarly, for the dates, ownership, and setting, you can verify this. For the dates, we have effective and the publishing date. For ownership, we have. So you can understand that whatever you give in the field set, it converted into a pen. Okay. And what this pen contains? It contains your fields. Okay, so what is this fields? And this is the fields, and these fields have some properties defined here. Okay, so these fields get converted into this widget. So let's see how it's worked finally. Okay, so you can now understand, like you have to provide a field set, and we have to provide properties for that fields. Let's see what you have to provide to the fields so that the Volto renders the widget. So you have to understand one thing. Whatever we do in the Volto, it gets from the widget. Like if we show you a form, it gets made up by the widget. And we have pre-built lots of widget like array widget, choice array widget, file widget, text area widget, object browser, and everything. Okay, so you have to pick for this field which type of widget is most perfectly fine. Okay, so I can think of, like, for selecting an href, we need an widget called object browser. For selecting a title type, we do not provide a widget. If you do not provide any widget, the Volto by default give you a text widget. What the text widget contains? It contains a title and give you an input. Okay, so you pass the title. This title is shown by the Volto, and it gives you the input full. So let's see how it's work. So you given us a title field, and this title field is rendered here. Okay, and this is the text widget. Okay, once you go to the description and you provide me text area widget, then this will be rendered. You see, this is the text area widget. And for the file type, like I do not show you the example, but for the file type, it should be like the file widget, and you will see this widget. Okay, I think now you understand like how is schema get converted. So a schema has the field set contains the fields have the properties. In property, they show you an widget, and this widget is rendered in the Volto. So let's see after step by step what everything is does. So what we do, like we fetch the schema from add.jsx, and then we pass the schema to form.jsx. You can find the form component from source component manage form. What does form.jsx does is get your schema from the add.jsx, map through your field set, and pass each field to the field.jsx. You can find the field.jsx at source component manage form field. So what does field.jsx does? Generally, field.jsx get the widget by mapping the widget name with the widget component. So you see earlier in this slide, we are passing this widget should be object browser. Widget should be object browser. If you do not pass, it's the default is the text widget. But you can also pass like text area widget. You can also pass like file widget, right? So generally, what field.jsx does is like it's get your properties of that field from the schema and map those fields properties with the widget mapper, and the widget mapper returns you the widget component, and thus the Volto renders that component and which you see in the front end. So here is the render view of the individual widget. So you get the title for the text widget, description for the text area widget, and the file for the file widget. I think you understand that. So let's see how widget mapping happens. Okay. So we have a object called widget mapper. Okay, and where we define each widget mapping, like we want to map the widget by id, by widget name, by vocabulary, by factory, by choices, or by the type. Okay, so let's see on the in the code like how filters does. Okay, so this is fill.jsx, right? And you can see no on the widget. Okay, so you see by going to the source config and the widget field, you see we are importing all the widget component from the widget file. You see this widget thing widget. So we are importing all the widget like align, array, checkbox, flyers, query, text area, token. You have to go and read about this widget, like what this widget does, and then you create a content type and put their name. Okay, for if you have the creating the content type in the Plone, then when you select there, it's all already get matched with the Volto. Okay, so you see we have this widget mapping. Okay, so we have this widget mapping object where we match the widget by using id. So if we give us an widget to be id and id should be schema, we'll return you schema widget. Okay, if you define a property with widget and you give me a name rich text, I will give you this component. This is the rich text component. You can see this is from the widget, this component. Okay, so if you give me a text area, I will return you text area widget component. You see, we are importing from the this text area widget component. And how field.jsx get this component? So in field.jsx, we define certain method which extract this and do the mapping by itself. So you see, we have this get widget by the field ID, get widget by name. I can also show you, will show you in the code. Like you see, for the field, we have defined the widget like get widget by field ID, get widget by name, get widget by choice. And see, it's simple. Like go to type, find those type, and returns the widget, like whatever widget you have, and then it gets renders on the screen. So I think this is the simple step which you can follow and get you, and you render and the Volto creates the form. So let's get started from the start, like how everything's work at one by one. So we get a schema from the backend by fetching it in the add.jsx. Add.jsx passes this schema to form.js. Okay. Form.jsx map over the field set and pass the each field to the field.jsx. Field.jsx do the widget mapping and get the widget for that field and render it on the screen. So this is how a Volto generates form in Volto. This is how Volto generates form, right? So I think this is the first part. The second part is, okay, so now you understand it. Like, and now the second part is how you get draft.js editor for your content type. So, as you know that Volto has a powerful editor in which not only you can write text, but you can also render your custom component. But in Volto, you have to enable the block behavior for your content type. It does not come by default. So Volto gives you an editor made up by the draft.js framework in which you can write your text, but you can also write your custom component there. Okay, so let's see how a Volto draft.js editor look like. So if you go to this thing, this is the page type, and you see you get this draft.js editor like this thing. This is welcome to world flow. Okay, okay, you can write there. You can also render your custom component. We have some custom component like the image block and everything. I'm going to show you. Okay, so how you can enable this draft.js editor for your content type. So currently you can see we have this file type, and when you click, you get this form structure. But you do not want this form structure. You also want a draft.js editor beside it. So how you can do that? Let's see. So steps for enabling the block behavior. If you go on the front page of the Volto, on the left bottom, you'll see this user icon. You have to click on the user icon. Okay. Once you click on the user icon, a menu will appear like this one, and you have to click on the site setup. Once you click on the site setup, you'll see a control panel which contains a dexterity content type, this type of icon, and it's written in German, dexterity in Haspen. Okay. After clicking the dexterity content type, you can select your content type. Like currently we are doing example for the file content type. Okay, you select it. After selecting your content type, first of all, you see your fields for that content type. Like currently the fields for that content type is the title fields and select field and file type. Okay, and then you have this behavior. You have once you clicked on the behavior, you'll see that we get this block checkbox. You just have to enable it to see the draft.js behavior. Let's see on in live. So currently you see, keep in mind, like currently the file type looks like this. Let's convert it to a draft.js editor. So when you click on the site setup, when to dexterity content type, our content type is file. Okay. And when you go to behaviors, you see we have a checkbox, but it's not enabled. Click on the checkbox, save. You can see the info of the change save. Go to the file type, click on the file, boom. You see, we do not get this form. Now we can also write welcome to world loan day in file type. And you see, we have all these features, what we are seeing in the form on the right side in the sidebar. We still have this title, description field, and the file. And we're still generating this form using the widget. Okay. So before block behavior enabled, you will see this type of form feature which generates by the Volto. And after the block behavior enabled, you see this type of structure in Volto, where you can have draft.js editor on the left side and all your fields move to a sidebar which contains the similar field. This is how you can enable draft.js editor in Volto. Now we are going to see some blocks regarding how you can create your custom React component and render it in draft.js editor. I'm just showing you some blocks. So this is the page type. Okay, here you can write anything. Welcome to Plone. Welcome to world Plone day. And here you can render your custom component. Volto comes with some pre-built custom components, right? So we already provided you the image block, listing block, video block. For the text, we have this text block. For media, image, and the common ones would be the listing, table of content block, hero block, table block, HTML block, and map block, the Google Map blocks. So, but your requirement is much more than these blocks, like which provided by the Google Volto. So you want to create your own blocks, and how you can create it, like something new which you wanted to be in the core and you want to contribute to the Volto, but you do not know how to create block. So we are going to see it like how we can create a blocks. This is our big topic. So if you want to create a block, you simply need to create two React components. The first should be the editor.jsx, the second should be the view.jsx, and sidebar is the optional. Okay, so you can provide a sidebar or not. So let us understand what is edit.jsx. So how your block will behaves in the edit mode. So what is the edit mode? Like when you go to any component and you click this edit icon, this is the edit mode. Okay, and when you save any save the page or your content type, this is the view mode. Okay, so let's check if I have any chat. No. Okay, so this is the view mode. Okay, so let's give me example why we have this type of separated concern, like we are creating edit.jsx and also the view.jsx. Let's take example, like you wanted to create a block and you point it to something else, like some we are fetching this content from like on a splash like an image, and you do not want the user to navigate to this page because it's not necessary to know in the edit.jsx. Okay, so what do, you disable the navigation feature in the edit.jsx, but in the view.jsx and user want to see that which who was the photographer for this image, he has to navigate it. So in view.jsx, you enable this feature. That's why we have these two separate React component. It would be the same, like if it does not leads to is something different, you can create the same component and provide this edit and view.js will be the same. So let's discuss about the sidebar. So what is the sidebar? Okay, the sidebar is for your providing any customizability to editor. Okay, for example, editor can add the title of the blog. So you created an image blog and you want to know and you want to give editor a customizability option, like hey, you can put the header name by yourself. Like if you upload a cat image, you can just write there cat's image. For the dogs, it should be like dog image. Let's see. So we go into the edit mode, go into, and this is the image block. We upload an image and it will take, you see, you get all this customizable. You want medium, you want small, you want large file, you want the line image to the left side, on right side, full image. What will be the alt text for the image? Welcome or snippet. What is will the origin? You see, you can also like open a new tab, like when you click into this, it will be open in the new tab. You see, we have this view component and it's render, right? So now I think you have understanding why we are using this sidebar and edit.js. In view we do not have this feature, like when you select like this medium small, and so you see, and we are making image our React component render into some different ways. When you save, you see our component renders like this. So I think that now you understand what is for the sidebar. If your component, if your block does not have any sidebar or any customizability feature, it is just a static, then you do not have to provide the sidebar. But just creating this three file does not register your block and you will be able to see in the Volto. For seeing this block to be in Volto, you have to register this component. You can register your block by going to source config block.js, and you have to append your config in block config object. Let's see in live in code, right? So in block.jsx, I'm in the source config block.jsx, right? And you can see we are imported all the view component, okay, and all the edit component, like edit, title block, description block, and everything, okay. And then we have this block config variable object, okay. And in object we are providing a configuration like object, like title, id, what is the title, what is the icon. So let's see on this slide. So for registering any component, you first have to put this id, and the id should be unique. It should not be repetitive. So you see, we have an id of description, and we put the description here. Then we have this title field, like what is the name of the blog. So if your blog is an email, put email. If your blog is table of content, put table of content. Then we can also pass the icon, like the icon related to the that content type. There you have this edit and the view key, and where you have to put your edit and the view component respectively. Okay, you can also see like there is a key called most used. So if your component, if your block is frequently used by editor, you can move it to the most used. Let me show you like what I mean. So you see, we have this tab, pan, like most used. This is the component which is mostly used by the editor. This is the text view. So if you enable the most used, you will able to see this kind. This your block will appear here. Okay, same with the group. Like if you make your component group to the text, it will appear in this pane. If you group it to the media, it will appear in the this pane. And if you also enable most use, it will also appear into this pane. Okay, so I think that now you have basic understanding of what is blocks in Volto. But if you want to know more about it, like which props I get into the edit mode, which props I want to get in the view mode, you can go to docsvoltocms.com/blog/introduction. And here you find all the things related to the creating of the blocks, which props, what you get, how you can create, what is the best practice of naming the blocks and everything. So I think from now you can create your own blogs in Volto. I'm forward to seeing you more blogs created by the community. Okay, so now you understand like how Volto generates form, how you can enable your draft.js editor, how you can create blog, and the fourth thing will be how you can style your blogs, right? So I have created a blog, but how I can style it? So I can share my journey with you. Like when I started contributing to the Volto, and I see that some CSS is off, and I try to fix it, but I do not know where to edit the CSS. So I asked them and found out, like I'm just telling you because Volto uses 70 UI React for this for the fundamental building blocks of the component. Okay, so for adding your styles, you have to go to themes pastanaga/extra. So if you go to the code, you will find it here. Like on the root of the project, you find this directory called themes. If you go to in the themes directory, we have this Pastanaga because we are using a design system called Pastanaga. And Pastanaga, you have this extra folder. And extra folder, you can write your CSS, custom CSS. And one thing for sure, like if your custom CSS belong to block, like you created a block and you want to write your custom CSS, you can write in the block.css. If it's related to the content, you can write your CSS in the content.css. But if you're created a widget and it's a new, then you have to create a file, okay, and write your css. But just creating a file does not render your css into the build output. You have to import this css file in theme extra.main.ls. So let's see main.ls file. So you see we have this main.ls file, and here we are importing all the other files related to the css. So here you can see the extra block, print everything, print sitemap. You can see the sitemap here. So you create a file, write your css and import this file, and you are good. Like your style now we apply to your blog. But there is one caveat. We are using 70 keyword React for the fundamental building blocks of the component. And if you write your custom CSS, it might get run into a specificity war. Like maybe 70 keyword React, the specificity war, and it show you, and your CSS does not get implied. Okay, so what you have to do? You have to figure it out and see whether 70 keyword React just ignoring your css and the css is applied by the semantic ui. Okay, so you can see simply in going to the developer tool and see if the semantic ui css will be upper and your css will be just lower than that. So you have to win this war. So I think now we have a better understanding how Volto works and everything. So what about question? So you can ask me question on Twitter by just using my username iflaming, or you can also mail me, or you can also open your issues in the Volto GitHub account and I will answer those questions. So you can just go to the Plone Volto website, Plone Volto GitHub, and just ask a create a new issue and just mention me. I'll come back to you and answer everything and helps you by every manner, right? Thank you.